Well, I heard the alarm. That must mean it's 1 o'clock. So we'll get started. So hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Tierno, and on behalf of SQFI, I'd like to welcome you to this digital seminar on the importance of a food defense plan. During this seminar, all attendees will be in listen-only mode for the duration. So we would love to hear from you. So please go ahead and use that chat feature. Submit your questions, and as time allows, we will be answering them at the end of this presentation. The speaker for this program is Katie Jantti from TraceGains. Katie's background is in manufacturing and quality within the food, feed, and pharma industries. She holds a GFSI recognized lead auditor certification and has performed audits at suppliers, co-manufacturers, as well as supporting internal audits. In Katie's role in manufacturing, she has used TraceGains in the roles of supply quality and quality program manager for over 10 years. So at that point, Katie, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Today's webinar is on the importance of a food defense plan. Elizabeth has already introduced me, so I will move directly into the agenda. We have a couple of things to accomplish on our agenda today. First, we're going to cover some terms to make sure you understand how to communicate when talking about food defense or food fraud. Really some key components and why they matter, some suggestions when implementing a food defense program. I'll interject some personal stories and some learnings in my career as we go through the webinar with some examples and a case study, and then some practical steps to be proactive, really enable yourself to be reactive in a time of crisis, and then wrap up with any questions. So to understand food defense, food fraud, I think it's important to understand the regulatory framework of where it's coming from. In the United States, the FDA regulates food defense through FSMA and the European Union and the general food law regulations. The Codex also offers some recommendations that many other national regulations are based upon. And GFSI outlines requirements for prevention of adulteration, focusing on vulnerability assessments, mitigation strategies, and then ongoing monitoring. So there are a number of actions and definitions that comprise the entirety of food defense, right? Food safety and food defense, they're not interchangeable. The FDA broadly defines food defense as the effort to safeguard the food supply from intentional harm and adulteration. So every aspect of food, from your crops in the field to how facilities process the food and how it moves through supply chain in the various stages, that's all under the food defense purview. And when looking at these definitions and thinking about how to put your programs together, critical thinking is an essential part of food defense, right? It's in assessing risk vulnerabilities to potential threats to our food supply. It's a pretty big deal. So we need to consider how we can anticipate and prevent intentional adulteration, what vulnerabilities exist within our food production, processing, and distribution systems. As food defense professionals, we have to prioritize limited resources, right? Time, budget, personnel, all to protect against intentional harm. So, what areas deserve the most attention? What unconventional scenarios might pose a risk that we haven't thought of within food defense? How can you prepare for them? And then how can you tell the difference between food defense and food fraud? Motivation. Motivation makes that difference, right? Mitigation strategies to protect food fraud against intentional adulteration requires facilities to create and enact food defense plans, right, that protects from those that are intending to cause harm to our customers, to consumers. So those defense activities are often confused with food fraud, but the two topics are mutually exclusive. And how can you tell the difference, prepare for both, right? So I'll break it down. Food quality, it refers to the overall characteristics of your food products, like your taste, your appearance, your texture, your nutritional values, those standards that your consumer expects and those regulatory requirements that you're expected to meet. Food safety focuses on preventing contamination, illness, harm to consumers, right? But that involves, proper handling, how you're storing, how you're preparing, how you're avoiding pathogens, toxins, physical hazards, etc. And you know, those hazards are defined by regulatory agencies like the FDA to set those guidelines to ensure food safety. Food fraud, again, the motivation is economically motivated, like with the intent of deception, right? Of an intentional misrepresentation, substitution, or adulteration for financial gain, like common targets, olive oil, honey, right? Those are easily adulterated products that are very expensive. So an economic gain is there to make them cheaper with less expensive materials. And those mitigations usually involve, a vulnerability assessment, supply chain monitoring, testing. Now, food defense aims to protect food from intentional tampering, right? Harm towards a broader scope, right? Within food defense, you have to safeguard against deliberate acts, right? That could cause consumers harm and disrupt the supply chain. And those measures for prevention are like security protocols, training, monitoring, preventing unauthorized access to critical parts of your facilities. So a comprehensive approach to food defense, it considers all of these aspects within your plan, and that provides the resilience the public health is relying on. So food defense, as I said, needs to protect against adulteration within your manufacturing facility. Food defense has always been a part or requirement of GFSI. However, it's really come back into focus with the final IA rule or intentional adulteration rule. And again, it can be confused with food fraud. So the purpose of a food defense plan is to protect against the actions intended to cause widespread public harm to consumers or companies within your manufacturing site, right? Potential threats can range from tampering to hoaxes to the less probable terrorist attack. But the IA rule is a critical element of FSMA, and it's focusing on preventing those deliberate acts of contamination that could have a severe public health and economic consequence. Right, so mandating vulnerability assessments, mitigation strategies, monitoring, corrective actions, verification, training, record keeping, it goes on, right? The IA rule ensures that our food facilities are better prepared to defend against intentional threats coming from within the plant, right? To protect the integrity of our food and our supply chain. And I'm a big believer in training. I think it's a huge part of success. And according to the IA rule, individuals assigned to work at any actionable process steps, their supervisors, as well as individuals working there, are required to receive training in food defense awareness. So the FSPCA has partnered with the FDA to provide a free training, right, for your company to make sure that you have the resources available to continue to educate on food defense. It's a huge part of prevention, right, is enabling people to have the most recent education in defending your facilities. It's a free online course. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes, and you even receive a training certificate afterwards. So, while food defense primarily focuses on safeguarding the food supply from intentional harm, I find an intriguing connection to industrial sabotage, right? And here's why. And in 1996, there's a case of industrial sabotage that involved a competitor contaminating dairy and animal products. It was an intended act, right, to damage the reputation and financial standing of a targeted company. Intended, right? Somebody maliciously attacked another company intending to do harm, right? So there are significant consequences, recalls, people getting sick, financial losses. It really highlights the impact that one person who has malicious intentions can have on the industry, right? So while food defense it's a pretty big deal, right? This case of industrial sabotage had significant consequences. So the financial losses I was saying, the cost of the recall itself, the cost of contaminated products, the cost of downtime, and the loss of potential sales, right? And compensation to customers who may have gotten sick and needed help with, medical support. Not to mention the company's, damage to reputation, suffering from trust in consumers and their confidence. I mean, one attack can take years to recover from and years to rebuild your brand. And there were likely legal repercussions, including lawsuits, from regulatory bodies, because there were nothing in place to prevent this. So this being such a high profile case, often as high profile cases do, it leads to awareness, right, and change within the industry as a result. So, other companies may have reviewed and strengthened their own security protocols to avoid similar situations like this. But if, we can be proactive on a level where we're protecting ourselves, then we wouldn't have to learn so much from situations like this. And that's why we have food defense programs. So let's talk about food fraud, right? Food fraud happens at the supplier level. So it's the need to protect against adulteration and verify that the ingredients you're buying are truly what they should be and not altered either accidentally or intentionally. So I mean, fraud's been happening way back to the Roman times, right? Ancient Rome, Middle Ages, dilution of wine, fillers in bread. Food fraud's been happening for a long time, and there's many different ways that you can deceive your customers with fraud, by substitution, replacing one ingredient with a cheaper one. An example, selling horse meat as beef in Europe. Adulteration, intentionally adding harmful substances or diluting food products like melamine and infant formula in China, posing serious health risks. Tampering, so unauthorized alteration of a food product, like mislabeling a fish species or country of origin. Mislabeling as well, is right there with tampering. Counterfeiting, producing unauthorized versions, of well-known brands. So the Wonka chocolate bars in the UK, there were some counterfeit chocolate bars going around. And then of course dilution by adding water or other substances to dilute your product, like diluting milk from a tanker just before unloading it with water. So, food fraud has a long and persistent history. It's evolving in complexity, with advancements in food production and our global trade market. But despite centuries of efforts to combat food fraud, it still remains a significant challenge. So, food fraud requirements with GFSI benchmark schemes like SQF, they're really aimed at minimizing the risk for food fraud by reducing opportunity for fraudsters to reach consumers, right? And you do that by monitoring with your corrective actions, training, record keeping, continuous evaluations, etc. So I have a little joke for you. How does cheese protect itself from contamination? By keeping a great defense strategy. Yes, cheesy jokes. So I want to just showcase a Parmesan cheese fraud incident. Parmesan is known for its unique taste and texture. However, in 2012 at a factory in Pennsylvania, the FDA found that the product was mislabeled of 100% Parmesan, grated Parmesan cheese, which actually contained fillers like wood pulp and no actual real Parmesan cheese at all. It was cheaper varieties like Swiss and cheddar were used instead of Parmesan because they are cheaper, right? So there was a big impact to this cheese factory, and as a result, consumers are unwilling to buy adulterated cheese, or they unwillingly bought adulterated cheese thinking it was Parmesan when it wasn't. So that's that's a huge example of adulteration and fraud. It's misrepresenting your products. The reputation was damaged, there were legal fines, legal consequences. But what did we learn, right? We learned about the limitations of our food system, right? Specifically regarding Parmesan cheese, but we do have regulation gaps that the US, you can label anything Parmesan, and in Europe, they have more strict guidelines. So, as a result of these incidents, we continue to learn, we continue to grow, and we continue to protect our food supply. All right, now let's talk about developing your plan, right? It's really essential that you involve a diverse range of departments to make sure that you have comprehensive coverage of all aspects of your food defense plan. So some of those key departments are going to be, of course, quality assurance, right? To develop, implement your food defense protocols, conduct your audits, verify with your standards, but also production to oversee the day-to-day manufacturing, that food defense measures are integrated into production activities, as well as implementing the physical security measures within your facility to manage access controls and monitor your production areas. Procurement, right? Their role is to see the movement of your materials coming into your processes, right? And your supply chain to monitor the finished goods going out of your processes. So you really need support from those departments to understand traceability is important, and also to verify that your suppliers have some sort of standard to protect against food defense before moving forward with purchasing. HR, they also play a crucial role in food defense, doing background checks for new hires, and new hire training, also enforcing that food defense is a part of new hire training is a control measure. IT is also crucial to pull into your food defense team so that you have security of your digital systems, all right, and your data. You protect your data, make sure you have cybersecurity measures as well. And also, your legal regulatory teams to make sure that your products comply with legal standards and regulatory compliance, and even your R&D teams, right? They're developing your new products, improving your existing ones, and they can help support in, maybe authenticity verification methods of your raw materials coming in. So really, your food defense team it's a big deal to get the right people in the right place to all come together and continuously have regular meetings to discuss any new strategies, review any incidences that may have come up, update your protocols. Maintaining clear and open communication through the whole team is very important. So while you're developing your plan, use your resources, right? We don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time. The FDA has guidelines, resources like the Food Defense Plan Builder. It's a free tool. It's designed to help businesses customize their food defense plans. FSMA also has resources for requirements for food defense, as well as, mitigation strategy help. GFSI provides, the benchmarking schemes like SQF, for instance, for certification. The FDA also offers that free training course I mentioned. USDA for meat, poultry, and eggs. The CDC even offers resources on food defense as well. As the Food Protection and Defense Institute, they also have resources for education. There are templates that are out there, checklists that are out there. Use your resources, but also keep in mind that your facility is not the same as everyone else's facility. So you can have these templates and these checklists, but you're still going to have to do the work to identify your vulnerabilities at your facility to develop your food defense plan. And they have to be specific to your facility to develop those. And then another big portion of developing your plan is to implement some type of digital tool. It can really enhance streamlining your food defense plan, your food safety plans, better monitoring of your data, more effective response mechanisms to any type of threats, cybersecurity, site security. Having a digital network of your data can help maintain traceability. in one centralized place, right? You can have automated workflows that are, kind of working in the background to reduce the amount of human error, right? Improve consistency in your data. You can have instant alerts and notifications that are automatically alerting you to threats, as well as pulling in all these different departments. I mean, that's a lot to manage. It's a lot of departments to be on board on one team, and to keep that open communication, being able to automate that is really, really important, right? So leverage your digital tools to protect yourself from, the physical and the cyber attacks as well. All right, so now we have a good understanding of food defense. Let's talk about some of the key components for your plan. Your risk assessment, right? You can use your KATs to help identify your potential risks, right? Risk assessing is part of regularly evaluating your supply chain for vulnerabilities like food fraud, but also part of your food defense plan. You will need to perform risk assessments for threats to your facility, right? Is your facility designed? Where are your access controls? Do you need to redesign your layout to limit access to more critical areas, or install better access controls? So combine the results of your vulnerability and your threat assessments really gives you that final level of risk of where you need to prioritize your vulnerabilities that need to be addressed. Surveillance and monitoring, right? CCTV, access logs, monitor your critical areas with surveillance systems, regularly evaluate that data for any anomalies, right? Personnel training, big believer in training, right? Educate your employees, educate your leadership, educate everyone on recognizing the signs of intentional adulteration and the impact that can have on your business as well. As our consumers, I'm a consumer. I want to know it's safe. I want to feed my child, both of my children, safe food, right? Foster a culture where employees are comfortable reporting unusual behavior or security breaches, right? Perhaps have like an anonymous tip line where employees can enable themselves to speak up and report anything. Supplier verification is another big part, making sure what you have coming into your process, right, is safe as it can be. So vet your suppliers. Do you require them to be recognized under a certain scheme? Traceability and authentication, right? So use barcodes, right, and other technologies to track your products. So for example, meat processing plants, they use RFID tags. They track the movement of the meat from the slaughterhouse to the final packaging, right? Authenticate your ingredients. Use your R&D resources to verify the authenticity of your ingredients coming in, and your packaging that's coming in, to make sure your labels aren't counterfeited in some way. I've heard of a honey producer using a molecular marker to verify the purity of their honey, right? To detect any adulterants. It sounds very expensive, but it is a way to mitigate getting adulterated honey. And so ask your suppliers if they are doing anything like that with their products. And then your emergency response plan is also another crucial part. Like how are you going to respond to an incident should it occur, right? How are you going to respond to intentional incidences within your facility? How you communicate that, how you manage a crisis moment, who's on your crisis team, what steps do you take to isolate and recall your products? Like I do believe that as a previous auditor, food safety is a holistic view of every program you have within your facility, and food defense crosses over into so many of those as well. How do you take your mock recall plan and use that to kind of set the stage of how you're going to handle a similar situation of intentional adulteration with intent to cause harm, right? You should be able to respond very quickly. And, like I said, a crucial part of your plan is to control what's coming in. You have garbage coming in, you're going to have garbage going out, right? So a crucial part of your plan should be to vet your suppliers. Most suppliers are honest, and they'll supply you with what you've ordered. However, not of them all are all. So it's really important to use suppliers that you have some sort of relationship, right? That you either visited, you've audited, or they have been approved by a third-party audit scheme. This should not preclude you from doing any type of testing and verification, right? Trust. They have good programs in place, but always verify. And everything has a price. If your procurement team says, hey, look, I found this, it's a great price, it's available, we can get it here tomorrow, there may be a good reason why. So don't forget that you have things in place to be able to prevent any type of ill intentions, right, through your food defense plan. So when you're verifying your suppliers as part of, your risk assessment or your initial assessment before approving a supplier for purchasing, part of what I've done in the past in our risk assessment was to validate certifications, right? We use the SQFI database to verify that a certification was valid, that an audit actually took place. And that was before ever even asking for a full audit report, right? Is to check that off of our risk assessment. Which has really been helpful in the past. Like I said, not all suppliers are 100% honest or transparent. We had a certificate that had a forged date on it, and through validation through the SQF database, it wasn't in there. It was not valid. It was not a valid certificate. We reached out for help. We asked if SQF could validate that certificate. They could not validate it. So, the investigation ensued, right? We had a falsified certificate. But we were able to figure out that there was some change in this company internally, and their staff was not educated. And somebody new was hired to satisfy all requests for documentation, right? It's kind of like a customer service. So, you can take a PDF and turn it into a Word document, update a date, send it out, satisfy request, done and done. However, that person did not know, the consequences, and their audit certification lapsed. So we were able to work with our teams, reformulate, figure out next steps, disqualify that vendor. But it really is important to trust, but equally important to verify. I think these benefits really speak for themselves when you're implementing a food defense plan, right? You're keeping our supply chain safe, right? Your customers, you're keeping them safe from any intentional, malicious financial gain or harm to widespread public health, right? These programs are important, right? It will really just enhance your consumers to trust you more, right? In the news, there's foodborne illnesses, outbreaks, contamination scandals. They're all in the products that we buy and the big brands that we know. A strong food defense program really demonstrates a company's commitment to safety and quality, which is a significant boost for customer confidence when they feel like they're buying a safe product. I know it is for me, right? And consumers are more likely to remain loyal to buying products that they know are to their standards and that are safe, right? And bottom line is protecting your brand. Your food defense program helps protect you and reduce, the risk of those contamination incidences. All right, and so in the event of an incident or crisis, right, having a plan in place really make sure that you can have a swift and effective response, right? Minimizing the impact out in the supply chain, minimizing the impact to your brand. Right, so if you're a spinach producer and you have a recall of contaminated spinach, if you have a robust food defense plan, You can quickly identify the sources of all of that, recall it all, and maybe even catch it before it gets to the market, right? You can openly communicate with customers. You can pinpoint where that might have happened and have full transparency, limiting that reputational damage. You know, ultimately, a food safety plan, the benefit is to your company and to your consumers. It's for everyone. So, as food safety professionals, we do proactive exercises all the time, your mock recalls, business continuity, but there are some proactive exercises you can do to test your food defense plan, right? To make sure that your plan is effective and ready for real world scenarios. So you can look at your card access system, all right, and your surveillance. So if there's if there are any logs, you identify some suspicious activity at odd hours or repeated access to one area was denied. Having CCTV footage in place can actually really save you when going back and you're dealing with a situation or a crisis. I love food defense and talking about it, and also food fraud, because I've lived it being in the industry. When you're in an incident and you have to go through the investigation, it's stressful, and having a program in place is really helpful to be able to work through those. I was involved in an incident where an employee was disgruntled. He was working a lot and wanted time off, and so he chose to sabotage the process by, throwing a box of staples into a homogenizer. That is intentional sabotage, right? More like an industrial sabotage, but he was disgruntled because he wanted time off. So keeping your employees happy is a great way to defend yourselves against food fraud and malicious attack against your food. I mean, through your processes. Our investigation was like, maybe it's our packaging. We use recycled packaging. Maybe it's the metal in there. That's why we keep getting rejects and kicks offs. And then it goes into all the lost downtime and all the clean out. It becomes a really huge deal when you're living it, when you're dealing with it. So having CCTV footage in place can be a real lifesaver when going back and doing your root cause analysis. You can also do like cybersecurity drills to test the robustness of your digital systems, right? Where all your sensitive information is, right? That's where you can bring in your IT team to safeguard your digital systems, like what you would use firewalls, encryption methods, intrusion detection systems, just to protect your IT infrastructure and your data, right? So make sure that there are regular updates and patches to minimize that risk of exploiting your cyber attacks, because that's also a vulnerability, a huge vulnerability as we become more digital in our quality and food safety programs. So again, scenario testing. So like your crisis management simulation, simulate a crisis to test intentional adulteration. What would happen if one of your employees threw something into the blender? What would you do? Like, make a drill requiring activation of your crisis management team. How would you handle the media? How do you coordinate with public health authorities? Right? Or maybe even test like a penetration testing. So you test the physical measures of attempting to breach your facility, testing your access controls to see how far you can get into a facility with unauthorized entry, and then how you respond to that, So now you have some tips and, resources to develop your plan, components of your plan, some proactive exercises to test your plan, but where do you put this plan and how do you manage it? TraceGains has a lot of practical applications to manage your food defense plan. These are just some of the examples I have up on the screen, right? How other companies have been successful in utilizing TraceGains for their food defense plans. You know, improving your supplier management through risk, enhancing your traceability, right? Reducing recall and how long it takes, having your data in one place, you know, streamlining audit preparation, having that food defense plan validated, showing through your audit trail when you've been reviewed, having your meeting notes within there as well. And then standardizing employee training, you know, very, very important to track your training and make sure everyone is up to date and has the knowledge that they need to enable themselves to protect your facility and your food. So companies really can significantly mitigate risk, from intentional adulteration to industrial sabotage, right? And TraceGains can provide you some tools to help protect customers and your brand. So I have a case study for you from a previous role that I was in. We had a very, very robust risk assessment. Everyone worked really hard on it, really trying to bring in that holistic view of quality, right? We pulled in data from procurement, from sustainability, and from quality, giving us a really great overall risk profile for our suppliers and the materials they supply. And this graph on here is specific to quality data and the associated risk we had of those materials. With risk trending techniques that we had configured to our business within TraceGains, we were able to really forecast challenges, right? We were able to analyze our data, recognize where we may be, for example, single sourced in our ingredient portfolio. I'm really proud to show this data. You can tell by that dotted line that represents risk, right? You can see that even through the pandemic, our risk steadily was decreasing because we had mitigation strategies in place, because we were able to overcome supply chain disruptions with you know, defined specifications. We had a process in place to evaluate risk for emergency buy, spot purchases, you know, during a time of major supply chain disruption, but still maintain high quality standards. You can see the risk starts to go up, but due to, you know, company initiatives and more sustainable practices, sourcing new suppliers, of course, the risk is going to go up when you introduce new things to your product portfolio. But this actually shows a real long-term value of having the right tools in place for success, right? That return on investment is your 100% visibility of all of your data in one place, and that you're able to maintain a risk reduction over time. Our goal was 90% or better, and we were able to maintain that over 90% over consecutive years. TraceGains is easily accessible across all departments for global visibility as well. So really, really great case study I like to showcase. I'd also like to showcase some of the additional value. You know, we discovered over time of using TraceGains as a tool. We were able to have our, you know, our preferred suppliers in one place for product development and discuss with R&D on the selection of these preferred suppliers for new products, right? Customizable workflows beyond just supplier management, developing accountability, you know, across the board with our cross-functional teams, API data integration, ERP data, reducing that human error, duplication of data, increased security, right? Single sign-on or a multi-factor login, you know, automatic provisioning for new users and their roles. Let's see. Yeah, we also discovered the value of the network, right? Through sourcing and building those relationships and actually bringing product to market faster because we were able to approve raw materials a lot faster, right? Setting real-time KPIs, right? Holding accountability internally with your colleagues and both externally, you know, with your suppliers. You can pull up leadership or pull up analytics on a dashboard to present to leadership in real time. with your data instead of having to take things from all over the place and put them together. Taking out those Excel mergers of data, right? Data's in one place. But most interestingly enough, the biggest impact I saw of utilizing TraceGains was, collaboration, employee engagement, right? As a leader, that's something that's truly amazing to be a part of. Data can be a common cause of friction in any business. Not having the right tools to do your job, to analyze your data can be a huge source of miscommunication and friction. But having the right tools in place, you're able to actually collaborate with people all over the globe, right? Share your similar experiences, continue to develop and grow your programs to work together and not be so siloed working against each other. I'd say that is the biggest impact of implementing a centralized system with one network in one place, is that collaboration and working together. And that's really what makes TraceGains different, is it's that network, right? We're going to connect your teams to connect your vision, right? You're going to get rid of all the paper and put everything in one single system. And that's really what sets us apart. To be able to connect your supply chain, all of your partners, wherever they are around the globe, all connected, working together through one network. We digitize all those documents. They're not just sitting there. They're not just static documents in a repository. We are able to pull all of that data off and compare, your business rules to your data and what you need, and automate that, right? You can build automated workflows. They're just happening in the background, and it can all be done in one place. So if you are working on a specification with someone across the globe, you can log in different time zones and continue to work on it together, right? That's what sets us apart, is this network. And that's why 40% of the top 100 companies are already utilizing TraceGains, right? They're on the network, they're working globally together already. TraceGains provides the backbone to manage and automate, your supplier documentation, but there's really just so much more to offer. I'm really excited. We have a new CAPA tool that allows you to effectively manage your customer complaints, your non-conformances, and your corrective actions in one place, in one CAPA module. Being able to connect a customer complaint to a non-conformance and then back to the corrective actions. Instead of having like a one-to-one relationship, there's a one-to-many relationship within this CAPA tool, which is pretty cool. You can also manage, internal deviations, right? And track and trend those. So from a deviation, you can create a non-conformance. If that non-conformance warrants a corrective action, you create it and link them all together. But most importantly, you can trend it, right? You don't have to merge that data from several different places to pull in your customer complaints from here, pull in your supplier complaints from there, and just kind of merge all of your data together, right? This is in real time, and it's in one place, and it's a huge time saver. We also have horizon scanning. We leverage our partnership with SGS DigiComply. So horizon scanning within TraceGains, you can actually map global data to your unique supply chain instead of searching through a database, right? And then you can have alerting capabilities, which really allows you to be proactive in your risk strategies when you're looking at food fraud and your risk assessments. And with quality management module, you actually can coordinate all of your programs, right? The ones that are within your four walls at your facility, which includes your food defense plan, and where you have that versioning control, your verification activities. We also recently acquired NutriCalc last year, where you can build unlimited number of recipes. You can either bring in ingredients from the database, or you can configure your custom ingredients by using, that dynamic supplier data we can pull off of all of the documentation and the forms. We also have an NPD suite. If you're a longtime user of just document compliance, you might not know about this, but we also are able to manage formulas and specifications while also providing some research tools like a regulatory database to help teams navigate when you're making formulations. We also help companies stay in communication with your co-mans through finished goods, right? Keeping that information seamless from your brand to your co-mans. So like I said, we have a lot to offer, and that's all I've got for you today. So if you do have any questions, please reach out to me anytime. Thank you for attending today's webinar. I do hope you found this session informative and helpful. In implementing a robust food defense plan, it's essential in protecting the integrity of our food supply and our consumers. So let's work together and keep our food safe and secure.
Thank you so much, Katie, for that presentation. We do actually have a couple questions from the chat if you're willing to address them right now.
Sure.
Some of them are a little bit more SQF focused, so if you don't mind, I'll chime in with some SQF facts with those. First question, are there any relations with the physiological behaviors of a person that might commit food defense or food defraud?
Physiological, like
any
how
kind of behaviors, characteristics of the person? I haven't heard of any. I just thought I'd pass along in case you know something.
I mean, if you see someone being reclusive or complaining a lot, or just generally being unwilling, I would say that would heighten my awareness to watch. But I don't know of any maybe specific characteristics where I could say that person is yeah. That's the best I've got for that one.
Absolutely. The only thing I would add that is, like, if people look suspicious, if they're trying to hide something,
yeah,
they probably are, and see what's going on. If you have those cameras like you mentioned, you can follow them around your facility, around your plant, and see what's actually going on. So great. Next question, should food defense and food fraud be a standalone programs, or should they be reference each other, or how would you recommend this would happen?
I would recommend, and how I typically see it when I've done audits, is that they are standalone programs. If you want to reference each program within the program, I would say that's fine, but I've typically seen them as standalone programs because you're assessing different types of risk in your food defense plan as you are in your food fraud plan, excuse me.
Awesome. Next question was, does SQF have training in food defense? So I'll say yes, we do. We have a whole training platform on our website, so you can go and check out our website, and there is a whole training tab, so go ahead there and check that out. Next question is also for SQF. So where does SQF see the most non-conformances directly connected to food defense? So we see most of them that are committed, either they don't do an annual test, an annual review of their program, or they have unlocked doors. So that's typically the write-ups that the auditors are seeing right now. So Katie, back to you. How else can we challenge our food defense program beyond just locking the perimeter of the property? You did mention stuff about cybersecurity. Are there certain tests that you could recommend for our viewers?
Instead of just locking your doors, have access controls, right? Or really see how your facility is laid out. Do you have any other processes that are extremely critical that you need to limit access to those areas? That's another way to evaluate, where your target areas could potentially be within your facility beyond just locking doors, is what's going on inside once someone could actually get into the facility. And then, cybersecurity, really just documenting in your plan that you've worked with IT, that they have challenged your systems, right? I'm not an IT person, so I would reach out for help with that and how to challenge those systems. But I would definitely try, because that's, we're in a cyber world now. So I think that's a huge part of food defense, is protecting your data.
It is. And we've seen different sites that have had their records held. So they've been held hostage. Someone's come in and taken them, so you can't do your audit. You give no way to prove your records. But They could also do damage if you have your formulas on electronically. Could they come in and change your formulas, change your recipes? So just something to consider that they are secure. One thing I don't know if you mentioned it, maybe I missed it. It's not just external personnel that needs to be evaluated for food defense. It can also come from inside. It can be an employee. So just make sure that you don't just like, oh, our door's locked, no one can get in. Well, your employees get in, and where are they going? Are they doing stuff that they shouldn't be? Do they have access to different areas that they shouldn't have access to? So just make sure we're looking at the internal risks also.
Absolutely.
So this is kind of a follow-up. You probably already touched this. So how should cybersecurity be addressed in the food defense plan, and how can that be tested? So it kind of tags with the last one, and maybe it's the go see IT.
Right. Go ask IT. How would I test this? And then maybe you could I don't know, build some sort of protocol where you have, a certain time that you're going to test it, and everyone's aware of the downtime, or, it would take some collaboration, and that's just not something that I am an expert in. So I would defer to your IT team, reach out to, certain DFSI, any type of, different certifying bodies if they have some additional guidelines on that, since it is something that is becoming more prominent within the industry.
Absolutely. We also have consultants that you could find on our webpage that they could probably lead you in certain directions to give you guys some tips if you would need that.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think the last one I have here is, can the same people be on the food safety, food fraud, and food defense teams? And what if I'm a small site? How does that affect it?
I would say yes, as long as you are, the qualified individual with the correct training, that you can be on cross-functional teams and many different programs.
Yeah, like there are a lot of smaller companies out there, and you don't really have much of a choice. You have to have a crossover of personnel. Just make sure that they're doing the different tasks, and maybe the programs are separate, or maybe the programs do overlap in certain sites, but that they're all taken into consideration.
Yeah, and have multiple people on each team too. Right, somebody that's going to review your work if you're doing everything. It's always best to collaborate. Like for me, I don't know everything. I prefer
I
working in
don't
a
either.
team that could right, that can help me decipher the regulations, number one, right? What's even required. So make it a team effort if you can.
Yeah, cross function is very important. I know previous sites I worked at, it's like you're pulling in the maintenance team, the warehouse, the HR, whoever it is, but you need that cross functional team to make sure you're covering all aspects.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we got another question. What are your thoughts on enlisting the help of an outside person, such as an approved service provider, to see how far they can make it into their facility?
If it's in your budget, I do it. I would, right? If I could get approval, then you have someone with an unbiased opinion coming in, right? That don't necessarily know all the secrets of your facility that you might.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot. In the SQF code, so we are getting ready to change over to edition 10. We're starting just the very tip of it right now. Are there certain things that maybe you could suggest to SQF of, this is very important and maybe we're lacking in that area, that we could make our code stronger for the next edition? I know I'm putting you on the
Wow.
spot, so it's okay to say you don't know.
Well, I would say include something on cybersecurity as part of your food defense plan, because that's somewhere that I'm lacking in knowledge and I would love to know more about.
Awesome. So we actually are. We are talking about cybersecurity and how we need to implement that and get that into our code. So that's a great suggestion.
Very
So
good. Yeah.
didn't even have to prompt you on that one. That's great. For anybody who doesn't know, SQF has a YouTube channel. So this was, I took a long time to figure this out. It has a lot of great resources, great videos, just like this webinar will eventually get up on there. Check it out. It's a great resource. So Katie, I don't know if you have anything else to add. I'm not seeing any more questions right now.
Yeah, nope, that's it. If you do, my contact information will be in the presentation. Reach out anytime, even if you just want to share stories, I'd love to hear them.
Well, thank you so much, Katie. And with that, we will wrap up this and everyone is free to go. So thank you so much for being here and participating and asking your questions.
Yeah.
Have a great
Thanks
day.
everyone. Thanks for your time. Bye.